They made big demands, which they should have. They then have, in those negotiations, accepted that some things they won't get. They've been, remarkably reasonable, and the companies just have not taken it seriously. And so this is when you have a strike. And again, it isn't necessarily something that you get excited about, but you are excited for it.
Yes.
And that's the important thing here, because what the United Auto Workers is doing, or what the union's doing, is laying down a marker. And this is a marker in an industry that has historically led all American industry. Auto strike has historically been the biggest steel strike. And so what they're saying is, look, if we have to walk out to assure that workers get fair portion of the wealth of these companies, to assure that retirees are treated decently, to assure that you get your pension, to get rid of multi-tier contracts that pay younger workers less than older workers, and to start to realize the technological changes taking place in this country, that we are moving toward EV vehicles, right? And so as a result, that's going to change production, and they want to have a say in how that change goes. And also, we're deep in a transformation of all industry driven by AI and automation. And they want to make sure that as that transformation occurs, and as you have perhaps fewer people working in plants at much faster levels of work, right? So you've had a speed up of work, right? It's harder in many ways because there's so much more demanded of you, that workers can be paid 40 hours pay for 32 hours work. That's not an unreasonable demand. That's what they're doing in Europe to adjust to the automation of auto plants and other plants. And they're just saying we need to do that here. All of this put together is a visionary set of demands rooted in the moment that we are in. If the UAW wins, it sets a different tenor for all of our labor negotiations going forward in industries across the board. If they lose, well, I'll tell you, it's one of the biggest blows that workers, not just in the auto industry, but across all industries, will be faced with. So it's a big deal. And yeah, people are excited. People are energized. If you look at the pictures from across the country, workers are ready. They're strike ready. They're ready to go out if they have to.
Yeah, and I actually think not only are what are they asking for is so completely reasonable, I actually think that they should be entitled to arrearages since they lost their cost of living adjustment, whatever that would be. I mean, I know that, I don't know if that's, but like, they should be entitled to arrearages.
Well, there is an effort to restore the cost of living. And that's not exactly what you're talking about, but
no.
I think there's a consciousness of this and I think really, Jen, that's the root of the whole thing, that during the pandemic, these workers went into these plants and kept production going. In fact, they even, in some places, adjusted the plants to do, all sorts of very important work beyond their traditional industrial work. And so they made real sacrifices. They made real commitments. I think they did so as part of something that a lot of Americans bought into, which was the idea that there was going to be shared sacrifice, right? And we come out of the pandemic. It's certainly not completely over because there's still people getting sick, but we come out of the worst of the pandemic. And what we find is the companies, banked massive profits. Their shareholders are richer than ever. The companies are literally doing stock buybacks as they're negotiating because they have so much money sitting around. And yet they say to the workers, no, we can't begin to make you whole for what you sacrificed during the pandemic and even before that. And so you're exactly right, Jen. I think they're not going to necessarily get a classic arrearage payment, but I think what they can get is a fair increase in wages, which would be very large, very significant increase in wages, not simply because of the work they're going to be doing going forward, but also because, as you suggest, the sacrifices they've made already.
Yeah, from long before COVID. I mean, we could go back just in recent history to Obama bailing out the auto industry.
That's right.
So we go back to, what was that, 08, 09, whenever whenever that was, and, 09.
It was.
And so, that was when they were willing to take one for the team and give up whatever that negotiation, contract was at that time period. And they gave up their cost of living allowance.
Well,
So that's a chunk of time.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of time. I mean, many people have gone to retirement in that time.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of things to put in the mix here too that are important. You have to understand, if the unions had not, gone along with all those demands, the American auto industry might well have been ruined, right? Yeah. I mean, it was a very tenuous moment. And so the unions made massive sacrifices that corporations would never make, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is that these workers, they took a lot of risks. They did what they could to save an industry, and they succeeded. They saved an industry. There are many people in the union movement who think that what was demanded of them even back in 2008, 2009 was way more than they should have given. There's one of the reasons I think that Shawn Fain is head of the UAW at this point is because he comes out of a more militant sector within the union that has said, look, we've done a lot of compromises for a long time. We need to start making bigger demands. But whatever you think about that past, what you do have to understand is that this union has suffered tremendous battery over the last 20, 30, 40 years. We have seen dozens of auto plants close. We've seen communities devastated. We've seen the size of their workforce decrease because of automation, because of outsourcing, because of the transfer of production, not just to foreign countries, but also, the kind of restructuring of the industry within the U.S. so that much of the production has moved to southern states where there is not unionization. This is not the big three we're talking about, but other production by other companies. And so, they've gone through a lot. And I think they're ready to make a demand. They're ready to say, we're not sacrificing anymore. We're not going to, give up so that everything else works for the investors and the CEOs. And what's interesting about it? This is my favorite part. In fact, I got a piece going up tomorrow for The Nation on this. According to polling, 75% of Americans, I'm going to pause and repeat that. 75% of Americans support the UAW in this circumstance. I mean, that's astronomical. You can't get that level of support for anything.
No, that's really big. And that's one of those things that really proves what we say repeatedly over and over and over again, that the course to change is through labor, and it is nonpartisan. Because when you look at people in that movement that are supporting the UAW, it is across the political spectrum, and it has nothing to do with party.
What I do find to be very interesting, John, is the fact that this is really the third rail for most politicians. Yep. And obviously Bernie has their back. Joe, of course, is not touching this. And you've got Trump coming out and support of the workers, but telling them you totally got to end the union. It's like, but
Trump has always been a bad player as regards unions and as regards, these issues. And Biden is in many ways a traditional Democrat in this regard, or at least a traditional contemporary Democrat, which is very cautious, sympathy for the union, but not a high level of support. But what's interesting, and to me, what's really fascinating is the number of younger members of Congress, and of course, one older member, Bernie Sanders, who really are stepping up in this regard.
Today, just remember, I'm young at heart. I'm not an old man. I may be old, but mentally, I'm still young.
He is young at heart, and I think that if they do strike, and we still, we're talking a little bit before, so we'll see what happens, but it certainly seems to be heading that way. If they do, I think Senator Sanders will be at the strike rally on Friday at the launch. So, I mean, he isn't just sending a tweet out showing support. He is absolutely committed to this struggle, and he's made that very clear. And again, he's not alone. AOC has been, very ardent in her support. Today, I think it was The Guardian, Shawn Fain wrote an op-ed with Ro Khanna, the congressman from California. That's a very big deal because Khanna is somebody who represents Silicon Valley, thought of as very much a, kind of a congressman who gets the tech side of these things, automation, AI, all that. And what Khanna is saying along with Shawn Fain, is that this strike is absolutely essential if it does go forward, because it isn't just about the industry as we know it now. It's about defining the industry going forward, so that as this industry becomes greener, and it will become greener because of a lot of U.S. federal government money that is encouraging that process, as it becomes greener, it remains unionized, and that workers get fair pay and fair position in the workplace. And so there is support from there. You've seen support in some areas, but it is still so narrow. And what I would tell you is this: we have to be careful not to, identify the exceptions to the rule and say that's some sort of new rule. We have to recognize that still the Democratic Party needs to do a dramatically better job in supporting the unions that support the Democratic Party. I mean, this isn't a complicated thing. And I still don't think we're at the level of, enthusiastic, ardent support that you need in a circumstance like this.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.